Roberts in the GB newsroom. Ukraine and Russia are due to hold further peace talks in Turkey, although a Ukrainian government advisor says he's not expecting a major breakthrough. Fighting continues in the southern city of Mariupol, with British intelligence showing Russia has gained more ground. The mayor, who's calling for a complete evacuation of the city, says they're on the verge of a humanitarian catastrophe, estimating about 160,000 people are trapped there without heating. Speaking from Kiev, Ukraine's former ambassador to the EU, Konstantin Yulysiev, told GB News his country needs more support.
We need military equipment. We need anti-air equipment. We need anti-tank, weapons. Of course, we need fighter jet. This is with what we can accelerate the victory of Ukrainian armed forces. And here we count very much on you. And secondly, we expect from our partners to increase the level of sanctions. The sanctions must be devastated.
Here, the government is urging public sector bodies, including schools and councils, to review any contracts they have with Russian firms and consider switching suppliers. It says public money should not be funding President Putin's war machine. The former Prime Minister, David Cameron, says Russia's president needs to face justice.
What Putin is doing belongs in another century, and frankly, he belongs in front of a war crimes tribunal. It is so appalling, and it's not as if we're getting sort of inured to it. Every day you switch on the news and more unbelievable, terrible things are happening in terms of bombing hospitals and schools.
Britain and Australia are joining forces to send humanitarian aid for Ukraine. The first of 2 planes carrying hygiene kits, kitchen sets and other supplies heads to Poland tomorrow. It follows a shipment of British military supplies to NATO to bolster security in the Baltic Sea. Royal Navy vessels brought vehicles and equipment to resupply the battle group in Estonia. Bosses from rival firms to P&O Ferries are meeting government officials today. Representatives from DFDS and Stena Lines have been invited to talk to the Department for Transport to ensure continuation of services. The Prime Minister is backing calls for P&O boss Peter Hepplethwaite to quit after he admitted his firm broke the law when it sacked 800 staff. The government has ceded control of NatWest Group for the first time since buying a majority share during the financial crisis. The Treasury has sold £1.2 billion worth of shares, taking its stake to below 50%. The government poured money into what was Royal Bank of Scotland in 2008 to prevent it from collapse. The Duke of Cambridge has acknowledged that he may not lead the Commonwealth. Prince William's comments come after a difficult tour of the Caribbean, which saw protesters call for the royal family to pay for reparations for slavery. Pupils in England who are at risk of falling behind in core subjects are to be offered targeted support, such as tutoring sessions. The school's white paper also requires all schools to teach for at least 32.5 hours a week by September 2023. And the government wants the proportion of primary school leavers meeting literacy and numeracy standards to go up from 65% in 2019 to 90% by 2030. China has announced a 2-stage lockdown in Shanghai. It's after a record surge in COVID cases in the financial hub. Bridges and tunnels have been closed and traffic is being restricted as officials try to contain the spread among its population of 26 million. There was drama at the Oscars, with Will Smith hitting Chris Rock during the awards ceremony, prompting the Academy to post a response saying it doesn't condone violence of any form. The incident happened when Chris Rock made a joke about his wife, Jada Pinkett Smith's hair. It happened just minutes before Will Smith picked up Best Actor for his role in King Richard.
I look like the crazy father, just like they said. I look like crazy father, just like they said about Richard Williams. But love will make you do crazy things.
This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now, though, it's back to Patrick and Mercy.
Well, morning, everyone. This is To The Point on GBNews with me, Patrick Christys and Mercy Muroki on your TV, radio and online.
Yes, here's what's coming up. US President Joe Biden denies he called for regime change in Russia after he called President Putin a butcher who cannot be allowed to remain in power. We'll be asking a security expert how helpful his intervention was. Not very, honest.
Not very helpful, no. I was going to save everyone a bit of time there. But anyway, is the UK too dependent on Russian gas? If we have an abundance of our own natural resources, why aren't we using them to bring down skyrocketing energy prices? We're going to be joined by the one and only Andy Mayer from the Institute of Economic Affairs for a discussion.
Yes, and mayhem in Tinseltown at the Oscars last night. Actor Will Smith, who's actually my favourite actor. Yes, he is.
He's your favourite? OK, we'll do it later.
He slapped host comedian Chris Rock for making a joke about his wife's hair, which she lost through alopecia. We'll dive into the reactions for those. There have been many. That's all coming up and much more across the programme. And get in touch with your views as usual, GBviews at gbnews.uk. But first, Patrick gives his views on that slap at the Oscars last night.
Will Smith served up one of the all-time best TV moments when he stormed on stage and slapped Chris Rock after he told a joke about his wife, specifically kind of referencing her alopecia, which, OK, fair enough, wasn't very nice. Now, I don't really know how to feel about this. In some ways, I'm quite pro-slap. It's a tremendous bit of TV, let's be honest. It's the best thing to happen to the Oscars in a very, very long time. I believe we can actually just play it now. Bit of context so you can see what I'm talking about.
Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. All right? that was a nice one. Okay. I'm out here. Richard. Oh, wow. Wow. Will Smith just smacked the out of me.
I mean, come on. I can't be the only one who watches that kind of self-serving Hollywood nonsense, wishing I could slap absolutely everybody in the entire room. There is an argument, though, that what Will Smith did was actually quite romantic in a way, I think. You know, his wife's medical condition and just being the butt of a joke in one of the most public settings imaginable, and Smith stood up for her. What Will Smith did happens all the time. Every single weekend outside of Wetherspoon, someone gets slapped for being disrespectful to someone else's wife. OK, more like glassed than slapped, I suppose, but the Oscars is, of course, a much classier event than your local spoons. But it did expose a lot of Hollywood hypocrisy, didn't it? These woke virtue-signalling lovies will jump on any bandwagon they can. The plight of the Native American people, the environment, trans rights. Presumably, it's only a matter of time before they start harping on about plankton and how it's a sentient being and that whales must be cancelled for eating it. But when a man physically assaults another man on stage, no outrage. In fact, Will Smith got a standing ovation just moments later when he won Best Actor. For someone who's gone on marches to protest against violence, Will Smith certainly doesn't mind dishing it out himself, does he? And just think about this. In that room, at the Oscars, they all bang on about privilege, don't they? White privilege, male privilege. What about Will Smith's privilege? If I'd have just gone on stage and slapped Chris Rock, I'd probably be in jail now or someone might have shot me. But Will Smith gets away with it. Why? Because he's a Hollywood millionaire. He was about to win an award, after all, as well, wasn't he? Chris Rock isn't pressing charges. Why? Because it's Will Smith. And Rock knows that he'd look like a bit of a wet lettuce if he got involved with the police. Again, Will Smith has immense privilege there. The audience response to Smith's Best Actor win just shows the fakery of it all, doesn't it? J.K. Rowling gets cancelled for saying that women are women. Will Smith commits an assault, and that's absolutely fine. Their priorities are all off. Will Smith had the cheek to come on stage and say he wanted to be a vessel for love. I mean, if that's what love looks like, I'd hate to see his version of hate. Like I said, I'm not actually that bothered about the slap, mostly because it was TV gold, but I am bothered about Hollywood's double standards. They can't have it both ways. Standing up and clapping a man who's just assaulted another man on stage is hardly woke. Having said that, that is a room full of people who all gushed about Harvey Weinstein for decades, so I suppose this is just par for the course. Will Smith said he wants to be a vessel for love. Hollywood is just a vessel for hypocrisy. Pro-slap? Anti-slap?
Look.
See, I know your answer to this because we were talking about it off air.
I'm going to give a politician's answer. I'm not necessarily anti-slap. Yes. because I have to put myself in Jada's position, right? Yeah. And if I was, as you say, it's one of the most watched events of the year globally, tens of millions of people. And if I was Jada Pinkett Smith and I'm sat there, and you could tell she wasn't impressed by the joke. No. He'd made the reference was G.I. Jane. The character in that film is a bold woman. And so he was saying, I'm looking forward to you doing G.I. Jane too. The woman has struggled with hair loss. She's spoken openly about that for many years. And that is why she is bold. It's not out of choice. No. So it's obviously something, you know, that's quite emotional for her. Women are very closely connected with their hair in many ways, and that's why it's quite traumatic for a woman to lose her hair. And so it was distasteful as a joke, but you know, you're allowed, we live in a free society, you're allowed to make these kinds of jokes. I wouldn't want to ban somebody from saying that joke, but you have to expect the consequences that might come out of it. And if I was Jada Pinkett Smith, I wouldn't exactly be mad at my husband for taking that course of action.
Well, I think she owes him one, doesn't she, really? Let's be honest. They've got a very strange marriage, haven't they?
They have been open about she's been very open about some of her infidelity, and he seems to, you know, not have taken that too much to heart, maybe. No. Look, I'm not mad at Will Smith. Do I condone violence? Obviously not. But then again, look, I would be quite proud of my husband if he did that.
It was not. I can hear what you're saying. Look, you know, obviously, absolutely, we can't condone violence, and I do think Will Smith's mugged himself off a bit there. Don't get me wrong, but at the same time, you know, his wife's obviously, well, rightly so, I suppose, very, very sensitive about what is a very sensitive issue, and you know, he stood up and stuck it to Chris Rock, hasn't he? Yes. Look, I thought it was a good piece of telly. But what I will say is though that that Hollywood hypocrisy is just nuts, isn't it? Like I said, you know, J.K. Rowling probably wouldn't be allowed there because she thinks women are women, but Will Smith essentially should be in jail. No, he shouldn't. He shouldn't be in jail. He just,
it's just maybe different standards for men than for women. Put that one out there, didn't I?
Yes, absolutely. Just like to reiterate that I don't think Will Smith should be in jail. Thanks, Will. Right, GBViews at GBnews.uk. Moving on.
Yes, now to Ukraine. Very serious issue. It's day 33 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and President Volodymyr Zelensky says the country is prepared to discuss a neutral status as part of a peace deal ahead of face-to-face negotiations due to take place in Turkey from today.
Yeah, it's a massive development, this. It comes as the country's intelligence officials warn that Russia is trying to split Ukraine like Korea. They say Moscow is unable to swallow the country and faces guerrilla warfare if it tries to divide it.
Yes, well, the Ukrainian president said in his overnight address that there had been a cultural shift, with even Ukrainians sympathetic to Russia changing their attitude to hatred in the wake of the killing of civilians and the destruction of cities.
Yeah, and of course, over the weekend in the US, Joe Biden has personally denied that he called for regime change after he called President Putin a butcher who cannot be allowed to remain in power. I feel quite sorry, actually, for whoever has to walk around behind Joe Biden just with a massive mop and a bucket, just cleaning up after all his gaffes.
Yes, well, let's talk to Professor Anthony Glees, who's a security expert at the University of Buckingham. Thank you for joining us this morning. Is Biden, in some respect, a danger to global security? He does keep making gaffes which are quite serious.
Well, I don't think that this is a big gaffe, if it's a gaffe at all, to tell you the truth. Of course, Joe Biden is an old man, and old men can be grumpy and can misspeak, and he's always misspoken the whole of his political career, even when he was young. But if you want Putin not to have a victory, then you have to speak very plainly. And if you look at what President Biden said, these were actually, I think, rather reasoned words. He said, for God's sake, this man cannot stay in power. That's not saying the United States is going to get rid of him, we're waging a war against Russia. It's stating the blindingly obvious. There's not a single person of any decency in the United Kingdom that would disagree with those comments. Putin is a war criminal. He butchered people left, right and centre, obliterating cities. Of course he can't stay in power. It's absurd to say otherwise. The truth is that the moment that Biden started to get tough, when he said a few days ago that if chemical and biological weapons were used, then the US would respond like with like. He didn't mean they would use chemical and biological weapons. What he meant was, if you escalate, Mr. Putin, we will escalate. And that's right. And that's brought some results, in my opinion.
Yeah, and, you know, there is a strong argument for that. But I do just... You mentioned you don't think it's a gaffe because he's just telling the truth. Putin cannot be allowed to stay in power. But it is still the case that you can't... You have to be very careful when you're advocating for democracy whilst calling for somebody who is... Well, we know Russia's not exactly a beacon of democracy, but while calling for somebody who's democratically elected, on paper at least, to go. I mean, it's a dangerous line to tread, isn't it?
Well, I actually disagree. I think what's been dangerous has been the shilly-shallying by NATO, a weak NATO Secretary-General, more concerned to keep NATO together and balance different views than actually say the sorts of things that might cause Putin not to have invaded in the first place. And even today, now I'm a good friend of Germany and a good friend of France. You've got a German Chancellor on national television last night refusing to call Putin a war criminal. You've got Macron saying, I've got to carry on chatting to him. Everybody could see how Macron was humiliated by Putin, that great long table. The truth is, Putin is a Nazi. He's like Hitler. And you don't deal with people like Hitler by trying to chum up to them. Of course, there has to be a peace. Nobody in their right mind wants this awful war to go on. But Putin cannot have a victory. For this reason,
all right.
If Putin...
It's a bit of a leap, isn't it? I take your point and everything like that, but I mean, I do think it diminishes the Nazis when you say Putin is a Nazi. He's not responsible for the deaths of 7 million Jews and the rest and all of this stuff. I mean, you know, I think it's a bit of a leap, really. That I don't want our words to get bandied about too much, really. But look, Joe Biden is clearly terrible when it comes to foreign policy. Look what happened in Afghanistan. And look what's happening now is, you know, the minor incursion. Every single time he says something, there's a team of people somewhere behind him who have to go and qualify what he's just said. He's not up to the job, is he?
Well, I think Biden has certainly learned from Afghanistan, and I was very critical, and you kindly invited me onto GBNews in order to be critical of Biden's and indeed Johnson's attitude towards the pullout, the fiasco at Kabul airport and so forth. But Biden is learning. And, you know, you and I don't want to get into an argument about what is a Hitler and what isn't a Hitler. Yeah. I do know a bit about that. And to sort of say Hitler is entirely unique and so on, many people would regard what Putin is doing in Ukraine as genocide. And it's not racial because Ukrainians aren't a race, but he's killing thousands, tens of thousands of people, obliterating cities. These are Nazi tactics. And you don't deal with Nazis by chumming up to them or negotiating with them. You deal with them by defeating them. That's why Zelensky has said that Boris Johnson, you know, man, I've got a great deal of time for in the normal course of events. But when Zelensky says Boris Johnson is our staunchest ally in Europe, I think many British people are proud of it. GBNews should be proud of it. And why is Boris staunch? Because he calls it the way it is. And he's giving Zelensky and the Ukrainians the weapons they need. They need more. They need Patriot missiles to protect their cities. But we should not be moving at the speed of the slowest. We should be moving at the speed of the fastest. And that's Biden. And every time Biden is criticized, including by Antony Blinken, he should have kept his mouth shut. He shouldn't have said, oh, he didn't mean this, that, the other. If you look at Biden's words, he did not say the United States wants to, as a country, to attack Russia. He said he should not be in power. And if you call Putin a war criminal, it follows that he shouldn't be in power. You can't have a war criminal in power.
No, fair enough. Look, I really appreciate your time. Thank you very, very much, Anthony. Great to have you on the show, as always. Professor Anthony Gleeser, security expert at the University of Buckingham, just reacting to Joe Biden's comments.
Yes, well, let's go to some of your views now. Lots in the inbox about what Patrick spoke about not long ago, about that Will Smith slap, where he slapped
Chivalry,
Chris Rock yesterday at the Oscars, comedian Chris Rock. There's some split messages here. So, for example, Michael in Nottingham says, with young men killing each other daily, either side of the Atlantic, because of perceived slights. Mr. Smith sets a terrible example about resorting to violence against free speech. On the other hand, John thinks only did what any other man would have done if their wife was being made fun of with a medical condition.
Yeah, sticking up for your lady. Nice one, Will. This is from Daryl. Not exactly a knockout slap, though, let's be honest.
Yes, somebody was joking earlier about, it's damaged their perception of Will Smith because he played Muhammad Ali, didn't he? And it turns out he couldn't really learn how to hit after that. But Elaine finally says, everybody seems to rise Will Smith. Hitting is wrong, but how cruel was that comment in front of the world? They say hair is women's crowning beauty, and that lady came with confidence. Shame on Chris Rock.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because as a lot of people have pointed out, Will Smith actually laughed along with the joke initially. It seemed that way anyway, and obviously he turned around, his wife had a face like thunder, and you don't know what, she might have, obviously she's got alopecia, you don't know what, she might have been crying about that in the car on the way there or something, you just don't know, do you? And so, to be honest with you, I'm pro-slap.
Well, after the break, is the UK still too dependent on Russian gas? And how can the government get the price of petrol and energy for your homes under control? We'll be speaking to an energy expert next. That's after this weather.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGibbon. We've started the day with some dense fog in places. That's now clearing. Then it's another dry day for many, but it's a lot more cloud in the sky for some and a few showers developing. Showers already starting to form across parts of southern Scotland and northern England. 1 or 2 possible for Northern Ireland later, as well as the southern part of England. Just the odd shower here, but cloudier skies for southern England and this cloudy zone for central and southern parts of Scotland into northern England as well. Where we've got some sunshine remaining though, 15 or 16 Celsius, still feeling warm, still above average for the time of year. Heading into the evening, though, we'll see an area of more organised rain or showers push into southern counties of England. The showers across northern England, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland fade away, but another plume of showers moves into the far north of Scotland. Away from the cloud and the showers, temperatures will drop into the mid-single figures, but holding up at 9 Celsius where we've got a lot of cloud cover. A cold front, though, is on its way. That's pushing into the north of Scotland during Tuesday itself. That's going to bring in much colder air for the end of the week. But we begin Tuesday generally frost-free and a lot of cloud cover, a lot of low cloud, mist and fog, particularly for central and eastern England. Now, that will tend to retreat back to the North Sea, but we keep mostly grey skies, I think, in many places. And there'll be further showers for English Channel coasts, showers popping up elsewhere as well. And it's going to feel cooler. 12 to 14 Celsius in the south. Much colder there for the north of Scotland as rain and hill snow crosses central Scotland during Tuesday afternoon, followed by wintry flurries for the Northern Isles and the far north coast of Scotland. And that ushers in a real change for the second half of the week. We're going to see the cold air sink south. We're going to see in many places some further showers which will consist of rain, sleet, hail and snow, and a significant drop in temperatures.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A very good morning. It's 10:26, and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Muroki, and Patrick Christys, who's beside me. And we are live on your TV, online, and radio this morning.
We are indeed. Right now, is Britain too reliant on Russian gas? Unlike some EU countries, there isn't a direct pipeline of oil or gas from Russia to the UK. However, there are concerns that the UK is still too dependent on foreign imports of gas, including from Russia.
Yes, well, there's been some calls to restart fracking and North Sea oil explorations, to use the UK's own natural resources to stop us being dependent on foreign gas and to help bring prices down. But how do we actually do this? Well, joining us now to discuss this is Andy Mayer, the Chief Operating Officer at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Thank you for being with us this morning. Look, we're not as dependent on Russian gas as, quite frankly, most of Europe, but we are still dependent, aren't we?
Yeah, that's right. And we can be independent to a degree, but we are connected by gas pipelines to the EU, and the EU is heavily dependent on Russian gas, particularly Germany and some Eastern European countries, where the idea that we could somehow impose sanctions on Russia and stop all the pipelines that interconnect between the various countries is just a pipe dream, literally. The possibility there would be that German industry would have to shut down almost en masse, and that's the engine of the European economy. All that gas is pouring into Europe, filling up the pipelines, and some part of it eventually comes to the UK through our own interconnectors. So in the short term, there is no alternative to Russian gas, although we can stop the oil tankers and we can possibly stop the LNG shipments once we've got through the contract period, which the government has decided is by the end of this year.
Good stuff. Right. What can we do then? What could we do differently? I mean, there's talk of fracking, isn't there? Shale gas, all this kind of stuff. How could we actually go about doing that, and how quickly could we do it?
So this year, the only thing the government should be thinking about really is getting out of the way. So what they did with fracking was put a moratorium on it in 2019 based on some spurious scientific studies that said earthquakes are really bad, or other earth tremors. And the levels that they put as the test for that was at such a low level that a ladder falling over would have triggered the test. So essentially they banned an industry really on the basis that local people said they didn't like it, and the government's more scared of local people than it is, frankly, of Vladimir Putin. What then happens is, if that moratorium is lifted this year, the drilling can start quite quickly. It can start en masse, and investment will pour in, and then you'll see a lot of things going on across the country. You'll see things happening in the North Sea regardless. The government has at least said they're going to do that. And while this is going on, what the government's trying to do is establish new trade deals with other oil-producing nations. Hence the headlines a couple of weeks ago about Saudi Arabia, which caused a bit of controversy, but is exactly the right thing to do at the moment.
So much of our energy policy is very convoluted. It's not very coherent. And quite frankly, I don't think the average person on the street who's just trying to pay their energy bills and put petrol in their car really cares about the wider politics of it all. What they do care about is, how will it affect me? How much poorer is the current energy crisis going to make me? How much is it going to cost for me to fill up my car and pay my bills? There's only bad news, isn't there, sadly, in that respect, at least for the next year or so. Would you say that's accurate?
For the next year, yes, but there are at least encouraging signs in the futures markets. So both the future price of gas and the future price of oil that are being traded now are much lower than what we're seeing as the current ticket price. So we're already seeing the price of oil come down, and we would expect to start seeing that at the pump in the next couple of weeks or so. We're starting to see, hopefully, gas come down, but that really does depend on what happens in terms of these other deals going on and whether the situation in Ukraine gets better or worse. So we just don't know there. And in the interim, there isn't a lot that can be done about that. So the government's trying to alleviate this through the measures it's put in terms of welfare, in terms of the energy price cap, and you should expect to see some more of those coming in when the October price cap decision gets taken. But I wouldn't expect to see any good news on energy prices in the near term.
No. And isn't it amazing how energy, gas, etc., can impact international affairs, right? Look at what way that Germany and France are behaving towards Putin now, you know. I mean, do you think they'd be doing the same thing if they were less dependent on him?
No, I mean, you could argue, thinking back to the previous item, that this is a form of appeasement. I mean, what Germany is doing is pretty much the only thing they can do. They've decided, I think quite reasonably, that they simply cannot get out of this problem that they've created for themselves with 20 years of terrible energy policies, where they tried to get out of both oil, gas and nuclear power all at the same time, leaving themselves highly exposed then to what Vladimir Putin has done in terms of building a Russian gas industry that the Germans still need. So what we hope is that they will now be putting in place the kind of policies that will allow them to get out of this. We're seeing a little bit of that. The EU, for example, is enabling nuclear and some gas projects to be considered as green, which is quite astonishing given the general view that they're quite dogmatic about this stuff. The UK is now behind them on this, which is extraordinary, and we would hope to see that addressed in the government's energy review. They're starting to think about restoring nuclear power. They're starting to think about new sources of oil and gas. Germany, for example, has no LNG terminals. So what we'd like to see is a complete reversal of this dogmatic approach to net zero. Not 100%. We do see the long-term future as being decarbonisation and low carbon, but it's got to be slow and steady. We've got to get there bit by bit, bringing things on stream when there's proper backup, which at the moment is only oil and gas, which is why we're so exposed to these high prices right now.
Good stuff, Andy. Thank you very much. Andy Mayer, there, COO at the IEA. I mean, what this guy doesn't know about energy is not worth knowing. So there you go. He's a proper expert. Thank you very much, Andy. Great to have you on the show, as always. A couple of views, do we think, or we've not got time?
Yes. Well, let's go to Carol, who says that in relation to, of course, the Will Smith slap, which we know there's more important things going on in the world, but lots of you are getting in touch to give your views about that. So Carol is quite conflicted. She says, to my surprise, as somebody who would always defend freedom of speech, I think Will Smith was actually right to do what he did, because she thinks, while she's all for free speech, what he did was actually bullying, and, you know, we have to stand up to bullying in some way. So she thinks sometimes maybe a slap might be the right way to deal with the bully, which is an interesting point. Jackie also said, in relation to Donald Trump and Joe Biden and the comparison between those two and the gaffes Joe Biden has been making, if Donald Trump had said what Joe Biden had said, there would be outrage. If Will Smith was a white man and had thumped a black man, there would have been cries of white privilege and utter condemnation, regardless of the circumstances. So linking our two stories this morning, saying they both highlight some of the hypocrisy and the double standards.
Absolutely. And Lisa just says, well done, Will Smith. It was a cruel jibe and he stood up for her honour. She also goes a bit further, but I can't read that out. Anyway, right, after the break, from today, the majority of COVID rules in Wales will be scrapped. We'll be live in Cardiff with our reporter Lily Hewitson for all of those details. But I believe now we'll go to the headlines.
Good morning, it's 10:34. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. Ukraine and Russia are due to hold further peace talks in Turkey, although a Ukrainian Interior Ministry advisor says he's not expecting a major breakthrough. Fighting continues in the southern city of Mariupol, with British intelligence showing Russia has gained more ground. The mayor, who's calling for a complete evacuation of the city, says they're on the verge of a humanitarian catastrophe, estimating about 160,000 people are trapped there without heating. Speaking from Kiev, Ukraine's former ambassador to the EU, Konstantin Yulysyev, told GB News his country needs more support.
We need military equipment. We need anti-air equipment. We need anti-tank, weapons. Of course, we need fighter jet. This is with what we can accelerate the victory of Ukrainian armed forces. And here we count very much on you. And secondly, we expect from our partners to increase the level of sanctions. The sanctions must be devastated.
The government has ceded control of NatWest Group for the first time since buying a majority share during the financial crisis. The Treasury has sold £1.2 billion worth of shares, taking its stake to below 50%. The government poured money into what was Royal Bank of Scotland in 2008 to prevent it from collapse. Pupils in England who are at risk of falling behind in core subjects are to be offered targeted support, such as tutoring sessions. The school's white paper also requires all schools to teach for at least 32.5 hours a week by September 2023. There was drama at the Oscars with actor Will Smith hitting host Chris Rock for making a joke about his wife, Jada Pinkett Smith's hair. It happened on stage minutes before Will Smith picked up the Best Actor award for his role in King Richard. The Academy has released a statement saying it does not condone violence of any form. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Back to the point in just a moment.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that had been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling. Noise is being made here.
Joe Biden walking out.
Thank you very much for joining us. Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Morning, everyone. It's 10:39. This is To The Point with me, Patrick, Christys and Mercy Muroki on GB News. We are live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, well, it was the biggest night yesterday in the showbiz calendar, the Oscars, where the biggest stars were celebrated for their performances and box office success. Will Smith, my favourite actor.
Actually, let's talk about that. Yeah. Of all of the actors in the world, Will Smith is your favourite.
Yes, and I reached that conclusion only by a process of deduction, because I realised pretty much 90% of my favourite films, he is the lead actor in it. So I just thought I might as well admit he's my favourite actor.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm a Tom Hanks man.
What did you think of... Really?
Yeah.
Which is your favourite?
Well,
Big was Tom Hanks, right?
Saving Private Ryan is one of my all-time favourite films. Forrest Gump. is another one, and he's in both of those.
Yeah. Well, Will Smith is for me, including Shark Tale, which is actually one of my favourite films, the animated movie 2004. Anyway, won't go on about that. He was crowned Best Actor, though, for his recent role in King Richard. This is Will Smith. But it was this moment earlier on in the evening which got everybody talking when comedian Chris Rock made a joke about Will's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith. Let's take another look at that video.
Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. All right? that was a nice one. Okay. I'm out here. Richard. Oh, wow. Wow. Will Smith just smacked the out of me.
Well,
keep my wife's name out of your mouth.
Yeah, the other part you didn't see, actually, is the longer version of that. Shows Will then very angrily shouting at Chris Rock to keep his wife's name out of his mouth, which is fair enough. He looked incredibly angry, to be honest. Lots of people are saying, oh, you guys are naive, it was staged. And
I don't think it was.
Yeah, I'm not sure it was.
I don't think it was.
As a Will Smith enthusiast, I mean, I think that was genuine anger coming from...
Well, he's not good enough actor to have pulled that. No, sorry. OK. No, I don't think... I think Chris Rock's reaction was pretty genuine, you know?
Yeah.
I think his reaction was pretty genuine, and there's the bit after that, as I'm sure you've all seen already, where, you know, there's a bit of a pregnant pause, isn't there? And that one, I don't think you can stage that. I don't think it was staged.
Yes, well, let's talk to Richard Fitzwilliams, who, as well as being a royal commentator, is also a film critic, and he joins us now to give his take on last night's proceedings, as well as everything that's been going on with the royals as well. Look, Richard, we've been going back and forth with it this morning. A lot of our viewers have opinions about it. What do you make of what happened?
Well, quite frankly, originally I had thought, watching it live, that this was possibly some form of stunt. But it was abundantly clear that after having slapped Chris Rock when Will Smith returned to his seat and then mouthed obscenities, that he was deadly serious. He was deeply offended by this joke about alopecia, which his wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, suffers from. But there's no question that this was far and away beyond what should have happened. It's probably the most notorious incident in the history of the Oscars. That goes back 94 years. Heaven knows we had Marlon Brando send a Native American little feather to refuse his Oscar. We've had emotional speeches. There have been political speeches, and there have been all sorts of incidents of one type or another over the years, but nothing like this. I mean, the Academy desperately wanted more viewers. Last year, it was only down to 10 million from 20 million the year before. The great year was 87 million in 1998 for Titanic. But I don't think this was precisely the way they wanted to advertise the show.
No, not at all. I mean, it was TV gold, though, let's be honest. But so, look, let's just move on from the slap for a moment and just talk about the fact that Will Smith did actually win, didn't he? He won Best Actor, Richard.
He gave an extremely good performance in King Richard as the father of Venus and Serena Williams. He was always going to win. My bet would have been, or vote would have gone to Benedict Cumberbatch for the Power of the Dog, which I thought was a mesmerising performance of a truly repressed and malign individual. Absolutely superb. But yes, he was always going to win. And indeed, the various categories, Jessica Chastain, very good performance in the eyes of Tammy Faye as a televangelist, Ariana DeBose for the West Side Story as Maria's sister, extremely good, and also Troy Kotzer for playing a deaf actor, playing someone who is deaf, the deaf father in Coda, child of deaf adults. And this was the movie that, in fact, well, it won Best Picture. It's quite extraordinary. Just in the last few weeks, the Screen Actors Guild and the Producers Guild Awards, Coda won, and it's beaten The Power of the Dog, which was the definite favourite until very recently. The Academy, by the way, doesn't much like Westerns, only 4 of one in 94 years. But even so, Jane Campion, who did win Best Director for it, this was a masterly movie. It was an extremely unusual plot, and it was about love and revenge, a particularly fascinating movie. It would have had my vote, but fate dictated otherwise. Dune walked away with a lot of technical awards, which I think was only just, and our own Kenneth Branagh for Best Original Screenplay for Belfast. I was delighted he won.
Good stuff. I just want to play a little bit of a clip of Will Smith's acceptance speech, which apparently we don't have anymore. There we go. Oh, well. But it was quite an interesting speech, wasn't it? Because he was crying and he said he wants to be a vessel for love after he just slapped the living daylights out of Chris Rock.
Yes, let's just take a
let's have a look at it.
Ingenue Ellis, who was one of the strongest, most delicate people I've ever met. I got to protect Sanaya and Demi, the 2 actresses that played Venus and Serena.
Right, well, that's quite emotional. Will Smith there. Do you think that his award will be overshadowed? Do you talk of it being taken off him?
No, I don't think that it necessarily... I mean, as far as I know, there's no precedent for that.
No.
Very, very clearly, the Academy will be pretty horrified. Equally, there may be those who believe that this gives the Oscars the boost it needs, even if it's in the wrong way. I mean, it's impossible to know. I can't imagine them actually removing an award, but certainly this will not be encouraged or anything like this in the future. They had 3 hosts. They were desperate for ratings, and they've certainly got headlines. Not the headlines they would have wished.
Yes, let's move on to something, slightly more important in the grand scheme, which is the royal family, of course. And we know Will and Kate have been on tour in the Caribbean. It's been quite a controversial one. They've become embroiled in conversations around reparations, apologising for Britain's role in colonialism, and about republicanism versus sort of monarchism, all those kinds of things. I mean, William has said maybe he won't be leading the Commonwealth in the future. What do you make of what their trip has exposed about the royal family, or indeed sentiments in the Commonwealth?
Well, there's no doubt, firstly, that republicanism in the Caribbean has been alive and well for a long time in Jamaica. It goes back some 50 years, and Jamaica is very likely to have a referendum. There is little doubt of that, but I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't very, very close. So far as the tour's concerned, that there were disastrous images. That was the problem. I think most people in or believes in Jamaica and the Bahamas who came into contact with the royal couple in any way thoroughly enjoyed it. But the problem was the images after the football match, William and Catherine reaching out to children through that fence, and also the way they were in the Queen's, as Queen used it in 1953 when she was in Jamaica, with her Land Rover passing the saluting cadets. It did link with past eras in a way that it was probably not acceptable to do, and it certainly caused enormous fuss. That fuss, by the way, has been augmented by those who believe in a republic or those who want to attack the monarchy. But the facts are, William has shown in a statement with a good deal of humility that there are things that will be looked at again, that the issues dealing with the past are very, very present, especially in so many countries, and this is something that he will take tremendously seriously. They always have. The Windsors have always reinvented themselves. Regarding William's comment that it wasn't automatic that one day he would be head of the Commonwealth, well, it isn't. The Queen has more or less created the modern-day Commonwealth. It's her interest and her support, and subsequently we know Prince Charles will one day be the head of the Commonwealth. But I would point out that if you were not to have the British monarch as its head, you would have a rotating head, and that could mean, say, the president of Gambia or of Sri Lanka, and you wouldn't want that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Sorry, we're just a bit pressed for time, Richard. Thank you very, very much, though. Richard Fitzwilliams there, of course, man of many hats today, film critic, royal commentator. Yes. What can't this man do? Thank you for whizzing us through and helping us kill two birds with one stone. But there we go.
Yes, now some other bits of news you may have missed that are of interest to you. The Business Secretary, Grant Shapps, appears to be cracking down on the disgraced company P&O Ferries. That comes after 800 British staff workers were sacked without notice.
Yeah, indeed. Well, the contacted staff were then replaced by agency workers. We all know the story by now. They're earning as little as £1.80 an hour, thanks to a legal loophole in maritime law. Now, the government has stated that they intend to force bosses to pay the British minimum wage to staffers as calls continue for management to resign. Just on this, there was a little development that takes place in where I live. And the local Holiday Inn is going to be repurposed. So the Home Office, apparently, are paying many thousands of pounds a month, many thousands of pounds a week, actually, sorry, I should say, to turn the Holiday Inn into a site for refugees or asylum seekers, not from Ukraine, but other parts of the world. What's interesting about that is, I was in there at the weekend, they're having a meeting with the staff today, and apparently, quite a lot of them are going to be let go. So our government is doing a P&O, but with hotel staff.
Yeah, I suppose it's not the fact that the staff were made redundant. I suppose it's about the procedures through which they were made redundant. That they didn't properly consult the unions. They gave them no notice really. No. So I think it's about the procedure. I mean, yes, redundancies happen. I think that this whole thing just reeks of just corporates being out of touch really with what the public, how the public sees this kind of thing, which I'd be surprised if, their reputation is completely down the drain and will be never really recovered, because it's disgraceful, I think, what they did.
I know people who are refusing now, that would refuse to go on P&O again, but yes, anyway, so... the Shrewsbury and Telford NHS Trust has come under fire for its poor management of the maternity ward. Apparently, a high-profile report due to be fully released on Wednesday has discovered that.
Yes, well, a climate of fear within the trust stopped staff speaking out as hundreds of babies were left brain-damaged or died. A 5-year investigation into the trust found that pregnant women were also forced into traumatic births so the hospitals could meet natural birth targets.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
We will, of course, bring you the updates on that story when that report is officially released, and I'll be discussing this in my monologue in about 10 minutes.
Indeed. Right, Colombian investigators conducting an autopsy on Foo Fighters drummer Taylor Hawkins revealed he had opioids, marijuana and other drugs in his system. So the cause of death remains unknown, and investigators did not say if the mix of drugs was a factor. Hawkins, who was 50 years old, died at the hotel in Bogota with the band due to play at a music festival this weekend. Sad story, that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always really tragic, especially when you find that substances were involved, because we know lots of celebrities for decades really, have died because of addictions and because of drug overdoses and things like that. So it is always really tragic. And
apparently his heart was twice the size of a normal heart.
Wow, yeah. Well, some of you have been asking, why are you covering Will Smith when there's a war going on? And there's, we will be covering that in the next hour. We've got two great guests, expert guests, lined up on Ukraine to give you all the updates from that. We've got a general and an army general, and we've also got a professor. So we will be discussing that very much so. But it's always nice to lighten up the news schedule, isn't it? With something lighter, and it is something lots of you have opinions on. So I think, why not talk about it?
Yeah, indeed. I really can't believe that you find this behaviour okay. This is from Jennifer. Well done, Will Smith, for putting the final nail in Hollywood's coffin. If anyone else got up on stage and slapped someone in the face, they would have been prosecuted. Yeah, I don't find it okay. I don't find the slap okay. I think it's TV gold, and I can't emphasise that enough. Yes, all pretentious rubbish for lovies and suckers. This is Rob. This is regarding the slap. Remember, it's America. The guy was lucky, I think, alluding to America's gun problem there. There's a lot of this coming out. A lot of people basically saying they kind of are on Will's side, but quite a few people as well think basically it was a criminal offence.
Yes, I mean, we have been criticised, I think, for some of you have said we're condoning violence. That's absolutely not what we're doing. I think you can hold two thoughts in your head at the same time. One being, maybe he struggles a bit, but one being, I don't condone violence, and one other being, if somebody is bullying or perceived to be insulting a loved one of mine, then I may or may not be inclined to... to take some action that might not be agreeable.
To be honest with you, I don't know what the last thing I remember about the Oscars was. I mean, maybe when they got La La Land wrong, when they did
I don't watch it really, to be honest.
No.
So I don't much care about it.
I'll tell you what, I've watched that clip of Will Smith over and over again, though. Anyway, keep all your thoughts coming in to us on email. gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll be back after today's top stories, of course, after the break.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGibbon. We've started the day with some dense fog in places. That's now clearing. Then it's another dry day for many, but a lot more cloud in the sky for some and a few showers developing. Showers already starting to form across parts of southern Scotland and northern England. 1 or 2 possible for Northern Ireland later, as well as the southern part of England. Just the odd shower here, but cloudier skies for southern England and this cloudy zone for central and southern parts of Scotland into northern England as well. Where we've got some sunshine remaining though, 15 or 16 Celsius, still feeling warm, still above average for the time of year. Heading into the evening though, we'll see an area of more organised rain or showers push into southern counties of England. The showers across northern England, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland fade away, but another plume of showers moves into the far north of Scotland. Away from the cloud and the showers, temperatures will drop into the mid-single figures, but holding up at 9 Celsius where we've got a lot of cloud cover. A cold front, though, is on its way. That's pushing into the north of Scotland during Tuesday itself. That's going to bring in much colder air for the end of the week, but we begin Tuesday generally frost-free and a lot of cloud cover, a lot of low cloud, mist and fog, particularly for central and eastern England. Now, that will tend to retreat back to the North Sea, but we keep mostly grey skies, I think, in many places. And there'll be further showers for English Channel coast, showers popping up elsewhere as well. And it's going to feel cooler, 12 to 14 Celsius in the south. Much colder there for the north of Scotland as rain and hill snow crosses central Scotland during Tuesday afternoon, followed by wintry flurries for the Northern Isles and the far north coast of Scotland. And that ushers in a real change for the second half of the week. We're going to see the cold air sink south. We're going to see in many places some further showers which will consist of rain, sleet, hail and snow, and a significant drop in temperatures.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Muroki, and Patrick Christys. On your TV, radio and online, we're here with you for another hour with a show full of today's big stories, lots of discussion, expert guests, our opinions and your opinions.
Yes, indeed. Right, well, make sure you get in touch with your views, as usual. GBviews at gbnews.uk. We'll be going to those throughout the show. Lots to come this hour. We're obviously going to be dipping into the Ukraine conflict, but of course, something that we started throughout the show is Slapgate. Where are you on Will Smith's slap? GBviews at gbnews.uk.
Good morning, it's 11:01. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. Ukraine says the war has cost the country £430 billion in damages and losses so far. Fighting continues in the southern Ukrainian city of Mariupol, with British intelligence showing Russia has gained more ground. The mayor estimates about 160,000 people are still trapped there without heating. Speaking from Kiev, Ukraine's former ambassador to the EU, Konstantin Yulysiev, told GB News his country needs more support.
We need military equipment. We need anti-air equipment. We need anti-tank, weapons. Of course, we need fighter jet. This is with what we can accelerate the victory of Ukrainian armed forces. And here we count very much on you. And secondly, we expect from our partners to increase the level of sanctions. The sanctions must be devastated.
Here, the government is urging public sector bodies, including schools and councils, to review any contracts they have with Russian firms and consider switching suppliers. It says public money should not be funding President Putin's war machine. The former Prime Minister, David Cameron, says Russia's president needs to face justice.
What Putin is doing belongs in another century, and frankly, he belongs in front of a war crimes tribunal. It is so appalling, and it's not as if we're getting sort of inured to it. Every day you switch on the news and more unbelievable, terrible things are happening in terms of bombing hospitals and schools.
Britain and Australia are joining forces to send humanitarian aid to Ukraine, with the first of 2 planes heading to Poland tomorrow. The UK has also sent a shipment of British military supplies to NATO to bolster security in the Baltic Sea. Royal Navy vessels brought vehicles and equipment to resupply the battle group in Estonia. Bosses from rival firms to P&O Ferries are meeting government officials today. Representatives from DFDS and Stena Lines have been invited to talks with the Department for Transport to ensure continuation of services. The Prime Minister is backing calls for P&O boss Peter Hepplethwaite to quit after he admitted his firm broke the law when it sacked 800 staff. The government has ceded control of NatWest Group for the first time since buying a majority share during the financial crisis. The Treasury has sold £1.2 billion worth of shares, taking its stake to below 50%. The government poured money into what was Royal Bank of Scotland in 2008 to prevent it from collapse. The Duke of Cambridge says the future of the Caribbean should be decided by its people. Prince William's comments come after a difficult tour of Belize, Jamaica and the Bahamas, which saw protesters call for the royal family to pay reparations for slavery. Pupils in England who are at risk of falling behind in core subjects are to be offered targeted support such as tutoring sessions. The school's white paper also requires all schools to teach for at least 32.5 hours a week by September 2023. And the government wants a proportion of primary school leavers meeting literacy and numeracy standards to go up from 65% in 2019 to 90% by 2030. China has announced a 2-stage lockdown in Shanghai. It's after a record surge in COVID cases in the financial hub. Bridges and tunnels have been closed and traffic is being restricted as officials try to contain the spread among its population of 26 million. There was drama at the Oscars, with Will Smith hitting host Chris Rock during the awards ceremony, prompting the Academy to post a response saying it doesn't condone violence of any form. The incident happened when Chris Rock made a joke about Will's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith's hair. It happened just minutes before Will Smith picked up Best Actor for his role in King Richard.
I look like the crazy father, just like they said. I look like crazy father, just like they said about Richard Williams. But love will make you do crazy things.
This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens, of course. Now let's get back to Patrick and Mercy.
Good morning, this is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Muroki and Patrick Christys. It's 11:06 and we're on your TV, radio and online. Here's what we've got for you for the final hour.
Yes, Chancellor Rishi Sunak's popularity ratings have taken a nosedive following last week's spring statement. We'll be asking our political correspondent, is it time to end his ambitions for the top job?
Yes, and the Ministry of Defence says there has been no significant Russian advances in Ukraine during the last 24 hours. A former British Major General and a professor join us to give expert analysis on the current situation there.
Yes, and a story no one can get enough of. At the Oscars last night, actor Will Smith slapped host comedian Chris Rock for making a joke about his wife. We're going to be joined by Showbiz Journo for all of the latest, and we have all of that coming up and much, much more across the programme. And you can get in touch with your views, as usual, gbviews@gbnews.uk. But first, Mercy gives her views on medical failures in maternity care.
Yesterday, we celebrated Mothering Sunday, a tradition dating back to the 16th century. The day gives us a nice excuse to splurge a bit of cash on a nice roast dinner at the pub, like I did yesterday with my mum and my daughter. But just as I think International Women's Day, Black History Month and the rest of it are mostly just virtue signalling, I'm starting to think Mother's Day is too. Because do I think our system, our state, actually values mothers? No, I don't. Yes, we celebrated Mother's Day yesterday, but in just a few days, an inquiry into the biggest maternity scandal in British history is expected to be published. The 5-year landmark review into the Shrewsbury and Telford Hospital NHS Trust will conclude that 300 babies died avoidably or suffered brain damage over several years because of an unsafe culture and a lack of listening to mothers' concerns. But whilst unprecedented at that scale, failures in maternity care are not uncommon. Just at the end of last year, one of England's largest maternity hospitals had their rating downgraded to inadequate over safety fears. And this came just a few weeks after the NHS watchdog published damning findings of persistent weaknesses in maternity care. And this is a UK-wide problem. In fact, just a few days ago, the Scottish Government Health Minister, Hamza Yousaf, was forced to make an intervention after it emerged that mothers across the Highlands have been experiencing a series of maternity failures. Now, if I were to put these issues to a government minister, what they would tell me is that the NHS, or the NHS England at least, has just announced a few days ago a £127 million funding boost for maternity services across England. To which I would say, well, that's great, but that's equivalent to £217 for every baby born in England. How far will that really stretch in an organisation that, when it comes to swallowing cash, has the suction power of a top-of-the-range Dyson? It's not only budding or expectant mothers who should care about this, we all should. And why is that? Well, I won't state the obvious, that we all come from mothers or birthing people with cervixes, as some of the unhinged among us would say. The reality is, the overwhelming majority of us will, whether we like it or not, come face to face with the issue of maternity provisions at one point in our lives, whether that's because we become mothers ourselves or our partners do or loved ones. And it simply isn't good enough. Maternity care is a postcode lottery. Employment rights for mums are dire. Maternity allowance a pittance for many. And that's before you get to childcare. Marking Mothering Sunday yesterday, Suella Braverman, the Attorney General, said that too many employers are breaking maternity employment law. Braverman became last year the first ever Cabinet Minister to take maternity leave. But a law had to be rushed through Parliament so she could actually go on maternity leave without having to leave her job as a minister. If this isn't a damning indictment of how little forethought is given to maternity, then I don't know what is. Look, the job of mothering is one of the most challenging things women face, and making it as easy and smooth as possible makes it easier and smoother for dads, and in turn creates happier, healthier families. Until we get it right for mums, who are the backbone of, well, literal civilization itself, in Britain, in one of the wealthiest nations on earth, then we have no hope of getting it right for anyone.
Yeah, so how was your roast for Mother's Day?
Is that what you took away from it?
I did. I wonder what you went for.
It was delicious. I mean, you don't really need to ask what I went for.
Yes, of course, no.
I have had a pork twice this in last week. But anyway, back to the issue that really matters. Maternity care. I mean, it seems so fundamental, such a basic thing that you should grant women in a civilized, Western liberal country, right? But it's really shocking. I mean, and it is. I do feel like it's a postcode lottery because more often I am hearing stories from women about things that go wrong. I mean, I was very lucky, I suppose, to have a relatively smooth ride. But as we can see from this report that's going to be published in just a few days, and all the other stuff that's going on in terms of maternity, it's not really good enough. And actually, the issue stretches beyond that. I really just don't think mums in general are taken very seriously, or the job of mothering is taken very seriously. I think maternity pay is incredibly low. Mums being able to return to work, the state makes it incredibly hard to do so. They bang on about everybody getting into work. Yeah. And yet they make it pretty difficult, for especially low-paid women, once they've had a baby, to actually be able to maintain, well, firstly, spend enough time with their baby at home, and then secondly, to return back to work. And then on top of that, as we hear from the Attorney General, lots of employers are actually breaking the laws when it comes to firing women after they've had babies.
Yeah, no, indeed. And no, I think it's probably the hardest job in the world, isn't it, to be a mum, I think.
Well, yeah, to be a parent in general, I don't want dads to say, oh, well, what about being a dad? That's hard too. Of course, it's all hard. But, as the woman who has the baby and then who then, in the vast majority of cases, stays with the baby at home, you only have two weeks paternity leave, but there is now shared parental leave that people can take. Women need to be allowed to stay at home. They need to be able to afford childcare because ultimately, then if they can't, that leads to one of them maybe not having to work, the woman not being able to work, poorer families. It leads to children who aren't as happy and healthy as they could be. So I just, think that, Mother's Day, great, pat on the back, have a roast dinner, but let's actually do more for parents, maybe?
Yes.
Just an idea.
Absolutely.
Let us know what you think about all of that. GBviews at gbnews.uk.
Yes, indeed. Right now, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak's ratings have taken a nosedive following last week's spring statement. Polling by Opinion revealed 35% of people disapprove of his performance compared to 31% who approved. That's a 15-point drop in popularity from a fortnight ago.
Yes, well, Sunak has been spoken about as a potential successor to Prime Minister Boris Johnson, but has his recent performance put an end to any grander ambitions he may hold? Well, joining us now live from Westminster is our political correspondent, Tom Harwood. Tom, isn't it just the case that when the man was splashing his cash on us during the pandemic, then we loved that, and naturally now he's had to start rolling back? We don't quite like that.
I think that's certainly true to say that some of it, when taxpayers' cash is given to taxpayers, then taxpayers are happy. When tax is then collected to pay for it all, taxpayers are unhappy. Now, it does seem to be that there is something especially peculiar with regard to the statement last week, however. There was all of this, there were all these words trailed about how this would really help people with their cost of living, that there were going to be some significant changes coming through. However, obviously, when the detail of all that was announced last week has been combed over, we see that the tax burden is actually rising. That yes, some of those people on the lowest incomes are having their taxes cut compared to what otherwise would be the case. Well, that's not compared to the situation as it was last year, for example, because some taxes are going up, thresholds are rising. It's a complicated give and take situation. So for most people, for many, many people, not least because of that enormous inflation that we're seeing right across the Western world as well, people are going to be feeling a lot poorer next year than they did last year.
No, and that's the thing, isn't it? Do you think Rishi Sunak does actually have grand ambitions to become Prime Minister then, or not?
Well, I think just about every single person who has ever lived in number 11 Downing Street, or I should say lived above number 10 Downing Street, of course, since Tony Blair did the famous flat swap with his then Chancellor Gordon Brown. Every single occupant of that flat, as I think, always had one eye on next door, thinking about that next job. But to go back to the original introductory points in this conversation, I think it's far too soon to say that anyone's ambitions are over, or that we've reached peak Rishi, or that we've passed peak Rishi, or indeed peak Boris. Of course, many people thought Boris was a goner just a month ago, and now he seems to be back in a reasonably stable position leading the Conservative Party. Never say never in politics. Something could change next week that turn political fortunes on a dime again. So really, when it comes to how the Chancellor has been responding to all of this, there is more to come. Of course, this was a spring statement, a mini budget. Well, in the autumn, there'll be another budget with a lot more to come. And of course, there was quite a lot of cash. One of the criticisms of this spring statement was there is a lot of cash that's been held back in reserve because we don't know what's coming with regards to the next energy price cap that comes in many, many months to come. And we don't know what's going to happen to global prices there. We don't know what's going to happen with interest rates. We've got an idea, but we don't know for sure. So the cost of servicing debts, that could skyrocket, or that could only trickle up. There are many unknowns between now and the autumn, and so potentially what we could see is Rishi then splashing the cash again in just a few months' time. Big open questions, but one of the big criticisms from an economic standpoint of this spring statement is a lot of the benefits, a lot of the rabbits that were pulled out of the hat, well, they're aiming at 2024. So potentially what has been criticised as a peculiar set of economics might well play to be relatively good politics if people suddenly feel like there's more cash in their pockets just before an election.
Indeed. Tom, thank you very much. Tom Harwood there in Westminster, just whizzing you through Rishi Sunak's nosediving popularity, but of course these things do change rather quickly, don't they? Thank you very much, Tom. Tom Harwood there, of course. Yes, so, well, there we go. Are you a fan of Rishi?
Not particularly. I mean, I don't mind the bloke, but you know, he doesn't fill me with excitement necessarily. I mean, none of them do particularly. No. And I think it's going to be interesting seeing who's actually in the next election in a couple of years, who's actually going to be on offer for us to vote for as a leader, because at the moment, nobody seems to spark my enthusiasm, to be honest.
He's teeny tiny, isn't he, Rishi?
He is. He's about my height, which for a man is quite small. I mean, I'm above average, I think, for a woman.
Yeah, but all the cash he's got, you could stack it so high.
Yeah,
it doesn't really matter, does it?
Exactly, that's it.
He could stand on some of his cash, actually, to make himself taller.
Yeah.
He could, yeah.
Or some of his wife's cash, eh?
Or some of his wife's cash, yeah.
But anyway, some would say that's sexist, but I don't care.
His wife wanted.
So, look, let's go to some of your views. Carolyn says, Mercy, correct on maternity and NHS services. It should be remembered that this is Britain's future populations, its children and its future. And that's exactly the point, isn't it? These are, at the end of the day, future taxpayers. Yeah. We don't have enough future taxpayers in the country. We need to be having more children. John, however, disagrees. Mercy, why should parents get special treatment? They've chosen to become parents. It's not forced upon them. Can't they take responsibility for their own actions? I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for not for people not to get sacked just because they're starting a family, and for their babies not to be dying because they have, you know, inadequate maternity services. I don't think that's they can take responsibility for inadequate maternity care.
No. There's loads of it coming in. We're going to delve back into Slapgate. Sorry to see your partial support for Best Idiot Award winner Mr. Smith. This man has a long history of being a big mouth. So that is from Alf. Thank you very much, Alf. I don't support the slap itself. I don't, wouldn't condone violence.
No.
But I certainly, I'm glad that this morning when I woke up, that was what was on the timeline.
Well, D here says, strange how Jada was happy to humiliate Will publicly, talking about how good her lover was in front of him with millions watching. I'm not condoning Chris Rock's comments at all, but I think Will should have dealt with it off camera, and that's true. We were speaking about that this morning, weren't we? We were saying, she's hardly been what many would consider the best wife possible. She's spoken publicly about her infidelities, and she's made comments about how good her previous lovers were, and that is fundamentally an embarrassing thing to hear as a man, and especially when it's in front of the entire world. So she's got a point.
Absolutely. I don't know. It would have been interesting to see what her reaction would have been if someone had made a joke about Will Smith, I would have thought. But I don't think there would have been too much slapping. But there we go. Right, anyway, so...
Yeah, I don't think she's much of a slapper.
No. After the break, the Ministry of Defence say Russia have made no significant advances in the last 24 hours. We'll be joined by former British Major General and a professor for analysis of where we stand right now.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern. We've started the day with some dense fog in places. That's now clearing. Then it's another dry day for many, but it's a lot more cloud in the sky for some and a few showers developing. Showers already starting to form across parts of southern Scotland and northern England. 1 or 2 possible for Northern Ireland later, as well as the southern part of England. Just the odd shower here, but cloudier skies for southern England and this cloudy zone for central and southern parts of Scotland into northern England as well. Where we've got some sunshine remaining though, 15 or 16 Celsius, still feeling warm, still above average for the time of year. Heading into the evening though, we'll see an area of more organised rain or showers push into southern counties of England. The showers across northern England, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland fade away, but another plume of showers moves into the far north of Scotland. Away from the cloud and the showers, temperatures will drop into the mid-single figures, but holding up at 9 Celsius where we've got a lot of cloud cover. A cold front, though, is on its way. That's pushing into the north of Scotland during Tuesday itself. That's going to bring in much colder air for the end of the week, but we begin Tuesday generally frost-free and a lot of cloud cover, a lot of low cloud, mist and fog, particularly for central and eastern England. Now, that will tend to retreat back to the North Sea, but we keep mostly grey skies, I think, in many places. And there'll be further showers for English Channel coasts, showers popping up elsewhere as well. And it's going to feel cooler, 12 to 14 Celsius in the south. Much colder there for the north of Scotland as rain and hill snow crosses central Scotland during Tuesday afternoon, followed by wintry flurries for the Northern Isles and the far north coast of Scotland. And that ushers in a real change for the second half of the week. We're going to see the cold air sink south. We're going to see in many places some further showers, which will consist of rain, sleet, hail and snow, and a significant drop in temperatures.
I'm Liam Halligan. Join me every weekday at 1 p.m. for On the Money, your daily dose of economics, business and consumer news. I got 25 years experience covering economics and finance. We hold grown-up discussions with a host of experts who really know their stuff. We can't buy gas and store it. That was a mistake, wasn't it?
I think it was a mistake.
Even you, Liam, don't have a crystal ball.
Inflation's a real threat.
Every weekday at 1, you're On the Money.
GBNews is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis, and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that had been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling. Noise is being made here. Joe Biden walking out. Thank you very much for joining us. Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties.
But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it, Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
Well, morning everyone, it's 11:26. This is To The Point with me, Patrick, Christys and Mercy Muroki on GB News, live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, now to Ukraine. It's day 33 of the Russian invasion of the country, and President Volodymyr Zelensky says the country is prepared to discuss a neutral status as part of a peace deal ahead of face-to-face negotiations due to take place in Turkey from today.
Yeah, it seems like quite a big development, this, really. It comes as the country's intelligence officials warn that Russia is trying to split Ukraine like Korea. They say Moscow is unable to swallow the country and faces guerrilla warfare if it tries to divide it.
Yes, well, how is the war in Ukraine affecting world affairs and geopolitics? How does it change things? Well, joining us in the studio is Rana Mitter, who's Professor of the History and Politics of Modern China. And we're going to discuss what the war in Ukraine means for China in particular, of course, and just generally the global balance of power. How has what's happening changed things, specifically as it relates to, as I mentioned there, the balance of global power?
Mercy, I think from China's point of view, as the country that is the second biggest economy in the world, second biggest military in the world, and a country that really wants to shape the way that global order looks for the next 20, 30, 40 years, the Ukraine war has been a real wake-up call. When the war began, my personal judgment is that the Chinese government, President Xi Jinping, did not know that a full-scale invasion was going to be on the way. I think he probably had an idea that something was happening, but maybe more small scale. But when it started, he thought that this was going to be a slam dunk for Vladimir Putin, and this would put a Russia-China agreement very much at the top of changing the world agenda. That's not happening. And what seems to be happening now for China is an attempt to try and balance so that you've got, on the one hand, the willingness to speak about helping a peace deal take place, but also behind the scenes, I think, not wanting Putin to fall. That's why China was worried about Joe Biden's recent, slightly unguarded statement that maybe it was time for Putin to go.
Yeah, I just wanted your opinion on, do you think we're now more unstable or less more stable or less stable than we were a few weeks ago, because on the one hand, as you mentioned, this has exposed Russia to not be as dominant and as strong militarily as they might have assumed and as China might have assumed. On the other hand, NATO's stepped up, and now NATO might appear as a threat to the Far East and to Russia. So where are we in terms of global safety?
I think we're in a very crucial moment right now. In the next few weeks, it looks as if, particularly since President Zelensky has been putting out signals that some kind of peace deal might be possible, which involves, presumably on the one hand, becoming a neutral state, as he said, but also security on its borders. If that can be worked out, and if the Chinese, behind the scenes, can basically get Putin on the phone and say, look, you better take this deal because actually otherwise it means a wider chaos in the region. That might be one way out on all sides. On the other hand, it's really important to note that the Chinese don't want Putin to fall. They do consider Russia to be their greatest ally, or at least friend, in terms of pushing back against Washington. And from Beijing's point of view, that still remains the big long-term gain. Russia is short-term, America is long-term.
And when it comes to Ukraine and the geography of it, there are concerns from Volodymyr Zelensky that they want to split it. They want to split it like Korea. Do you think there's any chance of that?
I think that is a kind of second best from Putin's point of view. And if he can get something that basically suggests he's won territory, that will be a victory that he can give to his people, at least through the heavily controlled propaganda, TV and radio that exists in Russia now. However, I think there are two problems with that. The first is that I simply think that right now, the Western world still thinks that actually ceding territory is going to be a bridge too far, so that the kind of national unity but neutrality solution might be one that they prefer to that. The second point is that even if you get a North Korea type situation in eastern Ukraine, the same thing may happen. Lots of people there do speak Russian. That doesn't mean they are Russians, and they will have something to say about the fact that they're placed under a government that is not democratic and essentially is controlled by Moscow.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming into the studio. Thank you for your time. It's been great to have you on the show. Rana Mitted, of course, Professor of the History and Politics of Modern China, discussing at the University of Oxford, I should say, as well. So thank you very much for that. Right now, despite talks, the war rages on, of course. Joining us now for more expert analysis from a military sense is Major General Chip Chapman, the former head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence. Thank you very much for joining us. Apparently Russia hasn't really made much ground in the last couple of days. That's what we're hearing, or is that just propaganda?
No, I think that's probably true. And what's been broken is the strategy bridge between political intent and military power. The Russians tried to do too much, and if you try and be strong everywhere, you end up being weak everywhere. And that's the position they've got themselves into, because generalship is to find the means, or have the means, try and sort out the ways to achieve political objectives. And you go to war for political objectives, and both at the grand strategic level, Putin wants to secure the territory that he formerly had in the old Soviet Union and the spheres of influence, and at the strategic level, knock over Kiev, get rid of the political polity, take over the major cities, hold and have the politics of the future with Russia in control, has failed. So both at the grand strategic and strategic level, this war is not going well. That doesn't mean he's lost yet. It just means that it is stalemated. And that's why they talk about phase one being complete. But he has to look at how he looks at the axes. He has to diminish those and probably look to the south for gains. He cannot be strong everywhere. That's why I think you'll see significant counterattacks around the Kyiv area and probably towards Kharkiv in the future. So probably they'll minimise what they're doing in the north, try and be stronger in the south.
And you mentioned he hasn't necessarily lost this war yet, but it's currently a stalemate. Do you think he is losing the war in relation to the morale of the Russian troops that are actually on the front line of fighting this war? Because they have suffered massive losses already, haven't they, over the last month? And we're hearing stories coming out of Russian troops surrendering for money, for example, Russian commanders being killed by their own troops. Is this part and parcel of war, or do you think actually this indicates a loss of morale amongst them?
Well, there's a number of ways to look at that. Firstly, if you look at what the Americans say the casualties are, that's the killed in action. It's worth benchmarking that they've probably lost more people killed than have been killed in the British Army since 1945. So killed in action, severe. Normally you have 3 times as many wounded. But the thing which people haven't talked about is the greater portion of people who are out of action is what we call disease and non-battle injury. Last night outside Kyiv, it was 28 degrees. That's -2, -3. The Russians have been campaigning for 33 days. That axis came down from Belarus. You can guarantee that morale will be low if your supply lines are fragile, you've not been fed, your kit is in clip order, you've run out of fuel, so there will be more people surrendering, and we'll see a lot of people with this disease and non-battle injury. You cannot sustain the morale of a force which is essentially losing on certain axes.
No, indeed. And it is obviously a very, very tricky situation for Putin. The loss of life, do you think that there's any way whatsoever... Actually, I'm sorry, apparently we've run out of time. I apologise, Major General. But thank you very much, Major General Chip Chapman now. We will no doubt speak again very, very soon. Well, after the break and the news. The most talked about Oscars ceremony in years. Will Smith smacked host Chris Rock for joking about his wife. But yes, let's go to those headlines now.
It's 11:34. I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. Ukraine says the war has cost the country £430 billion in damages and losses so far. Fighting continues in the southern city of Mariupol, with British intelligence showing Russia has gained more ground. The mayor says they're on the verge of a humanitarian catastrophe, estimating about 160,000 people are trapped in the city without heating. Irish businessman Thomas Kavanagh has been jailed for 21 years for drug smuggling. Described by prosecutors as the head of an organised crime gang, he lived in a gated home which had bulletproof glass. Kavanagh pleaded guilty to conspiring to import Class A and Class B drugs, as well as money laundering. The Transport Secretary has told the P&O Ferries chief executive he plans to block attempts to pay workers less than the minimum wage. In a letter, Grant Shapps said the company can still offer sacked workers their jobs back on previous terms. Meanwhile, bosses from rival firms are meeting government officials today to ensure continuation of services. The government has ceded control of NatWest Group for the first time since buying a majority share during the financial crisis. The Treasury has sold £1.2 billion worth of shares, taking its stake to below 50%. The government poured money into what was Royal Bank of Scotland in 2008 to prevent it from collapse. Pupils in England who are at risk of falling behind in core subjects are to be offered targeted support, such as tutoring sessions. The school's white paper also requires all schools to teach for at least 32.5 hours a week by September 2023. There was drama at the Oscars, with actor Will Smith hitting host Chris Rock for making a joke about his wife, Jada Pinkett Smith's hair. It happened on stage minutes before Will Smith picked up the Best Actor award for his role in King Richard. The Academy has released a statement saying it does not condone violence of any form. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Back to Patrick and Mercy in just a moment, so don't go anywhere.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
That you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, it's 11:38, and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Muroki, and Patrick Christys on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, we are. Right now, the High Court in Belfast meets today to look at the case that happened 34 years ago relating to a young man who was shot dead while crossing the border. It's a significant case because it may be the last of a very long line from the Troubles.
Yes, well, the British government will introduce legislation that will give an amnesty to all such cases, and this is being met with resistance across the board, as you might imagine. Well, for more on this case, we can go live to our Northern Ireland reporter, Dougie Beattie, who joins us now. That's not Dougie Beattie, that's Patrick. Dougie, can you just explain to us the significance of this case?
Well, it is extremely significant. Aidan McAnespie was an innocent. He was walking from Auchnacloy into Monaghan for a sporting event through a checkpoint. I knew that checkpoint very well. There's basically a sanger in the middle of the road and you had to go through it. A weapon was accidentally discharged in there and shot Mr McAnespie dead. This was in 1998. David Holden, a grenadier at the time, 18 years of age, was then charged with his manslaughter in September. That case was then dropped, and under the Good Friday Agreement in 1998, all cases went into the Historical Inquiries team. That team no longer exists either. But in 2016, the Attorney General here put it to the PPS to bring Mr Holden forward for prosecution. Now, the problem with all this, I mean, that was a pretty straightforward case. Mr McAnespie was obviously innocent and was caught in something that was not his fault. The problem being is that all these cases were lumped together in the historical inquiries. And in the 1998 Good Friday Agreement, Tony Blair gave out what's called letters of comfort and Queen's pardons of mercy to one side of the community, the Republican side of the community, in order to get them to sign up. Now, he didn't tell anybody else about this, and it was only found out recently in the Supreme Court in London that such letters existed. Now, these families are looking for justice and looking to find out how these inquiries will play out for them. But of course, Republicans did 60% of the killings in Northern Ireland. About 20, 25%, 30% was done by loyalists, and only 10% was done by the state. The state were the only people that held records of all of this. And in 1992, the IRA blew up the forensic lab in Beaver with a huge bomb. It totally destroyed it, and it contaminated all historical evidence. So these cases keep coming back to court. Bloody Sunday was one that was a public inquiry. It cost £200 million of public money. The Omagh bomb was the worst bomb in the British Isles. It killed more civilians than any other bomb, 28 people and 2 unborn children, and still hasn't had a public inquiry. So what's happening is only one side of the community are getting the answers to what is coming along, and it's costing the British taxpayer an extremely large amount of money. So Brandon Lewis has decided that there's going to be an amnesty for everyone, and that will put an end to this endless traipsing in and out of courts. But of course then only some of the families will find out exactly what happened to their loved ones. And things like this, after or post-conflict, are going to play out so much in the likes of Ukraine.
Exactly, Dougie. I must say, a fascinating report. Thank you very, very much for bringing that to us. It's an issue that's actually been very close to my heart, actually, for quite a while, because you've got the prosecutions of people like Dennis Hutchings, for example, who sadly didn't live to see him potentially be acquitted for a third time, for example, over that. And it does seem a bit gratuitous. And as Dougie rightly pointed out there, you know, it's very one-sided, isn't it? Or it was very one-sided anyway. You know, you could have someone who was, you know, letting off car bombs for the IRA, allowed to go out and has a signed piece of paper saying they can do whatever they want, but then someone gets a knock on the door one day and says, you know, where were you this time 40 years ago?
It is a very complicated, well, obviously, it's a very complicated issue, because I do also see the perspectives of the families who you never want, you always want to seek justice for a loved one that's being killed. I mean, the politics of it almost doesn't matter. So I can understand why, you know, some of the families were so heavily pursuing. But as I said, I mean, look, very complicated, and certainly nothing that can be discussed in the few minutes we have left. But let's move on now. The Labour Party have accused the government of daylight robbery of Britain's pensioners. According to new research by the party, state pensions face the biggest real terms cut in half a century.
Indeed. Now, pensioners face a loss of up to £427 next year to the value of their state pension, according to figures confirmed by the House of Commons Library. Well, joining us now to discuss this is Vicky Price, Chief Economic Advisor for the Centre for Economic and Business Research. Vicky, thank you very much. So, just explain to us exactly what's going on then. Are pensioners now essentially missing out on 427 quid, is that right?
Well, what's happened is that pensioners are getting a 3.1% increase, a little bit like what's happening with the overall benefit system, which is based, of course, on the inflation that we had back in September. Now, remember, we had a triple lock. In theory, they should have received an awful lot more because average earnings were rising faster, but that was abandoned temporarily. So they're just going to get 3.1% now. That's going to be happening next month. Now, of course, we've already seen that inflation is over 6%. The latest figures for February were 6.2%. It's likely to go higher. We're probably going to hit over 8%. It could be 10%. It all depends on what happens in the Ukraine. Of course, that means that in real terms, pensioners are losing out. Now, they're losing out this year. It's possible that if it's all reinstated next year in the sense that the triple lock comes back as had been promised, that they might actually get quite a substantial increase, maybe more than what the inflation may be at that time. But for the moment, and certainly for this year, they're going to be losing out.
But isn't it a bit disingenuous for Labour to call this daylight robbery on the part of the government? Because as you mentioned there, they are getting an increase, I suppose, in line with inflation, and it's just because of in line with inflation. But it's just because of sort of broader circumstances that it'll be in effect a pay cut in real terms. I mean, it's a bit of politicking from Labour, isn't it, to present it like this?
Possibly, but the truth is there's still going to be a fall in living standards, and I think that's not, of course, just for the pensioners. It's more general. If the entire population that receives benefits is also going to see a real wage cut, and of course the population at large as well, because there are only very few areas which are receiving above inflation pay rises. The majority are way below that. The latest average earnings data suggests that the pay rises are around 4.6, 4.8%. If you include or don't include bonuses, well, that's, again, way below the rate of inflation. So pensioners are being hit like others. So from that point of view, yes, you're right. It is maybe as part of the population that perhaps shouldn't be singled out. But it is also one that in the past, everyone has tried to make sure they don't fall into poverty. And there's always a problem because clearly others could go out and work and do something to make up, if you like, for that loss. And there's a limit to what pensioners can do. I think that's probably why the emphasis is still on their well-being, which I think is right in this case.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, thank you very, very much. Great to have your expertise on this particular issue. Vicky Price, there's whizzing us through what's essentially bad news for pensioners.
Yeah. I think I was going to say, I don't think that in school they teach you enough about this kind of thing because, I think it's so important for younger people. Who thinks about pensions when they're in school? Nobody. And they don't talk about it. And I think it's so important for young people to actually know what it's all about because it does look like, we're going to struggle. We have an ageing population and there's not going to be as big a proportion of taxpayers in the future as there are. And, people need to... The young people in particular, they need to be taught to start thinking about some of these things, thinking about saving, and that they don't teach you that in school, which I think is quite disastrous, actually.
No, that's my excuse for the catastrophic state of my own personal finances. Anyway, right, well, it was the biggest night in the showbiz calendar, the Oscars, where the biggest stars were celebrated for their performances and box office success. Well, Will Smith was crowned Best Actor for his role in King Richard. But it was this moment, a little bit earlier, that got everyone talking when comedian Chris Rock made a joke about Will's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith. We've spoken about the slap all morning. I think, are we playing it? I'm presuming you are, all right? Let's do it. No, it's all right. We're going to play it in a second. But do you think it's real?
I do think it's real, and I think it's real only from the reactions of everybody involved. So obviously, Will Smith's reaction, I know he's a good actor, but... they're not that good. I don't think he can... Well,
he's the best.
When he was... what you don't see in the clip, really, that's been widely circulated, that in the full-length clip, he then shouts with all his rage, don't get your wife's name out of your mouth.
Keep my wife's name!
Yeah, what he did. He shouts to keep his wife's name out of his mouth, and I really believe that was a genuine outburst, and I believe Chris Rock's reaction was real. So let's just take a look at the clip and you can judge for yourself.
Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. All right? That was a nice one. Okay. I'm out here. Richard. Oh, wow. Wow. Will Smith just smacked the out of me.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It's great. TV gold. It's TV gold.
Yeah, absolutely. It's that.
Yeah, so well, look, a lot of you are in the inbox now going, I can't believe how stupid you are. You've fallen for it. They're actors. Well, maybe, but I mean, it seems... if I was Will Smith, I wouldn't have agreed to have done that.
I mean, I don't see why he would need to do that.
He's about to win Best Actor.
Yeah, he won Best Actor just a few minutes after that. He's one of, the biggest actors on the whole planet. He's not a B-list celebrity by any stretch of the imagination. I don't know why he would need to physically assault a man live on air for his career.
I don't think Jada's reaction was staged either. She did not look impressed.
She was not impressed with that joke.
She was not impressed. I've seen that look several times. Anyway, right, OK. Hannah Hope is the assistant showbiz editor at The Sun on Sunday newspaper and joins us now. Thank you. Real or fake?
Absolutely real. I mean, if we weren't sure Hollywood actors had no sense of humour, last night's little catastrophe definitely confirmed it. Will Smith was absolutely seething, but what is interesting is that it looked like he was just going to laugh the joke off as we saw him smiling and chuckling. But Jada obviously rolled her eyes and looked annoyed. So when they cut back to Chris, Will Smith must have either shared a look or a comment with Jada and then realised that, he was actually really angry and then marched up onto stage. But it absolutely wasn't staged. I mean, you can even hear the thump of the slap, can't you? It really was quite violent.
It was. I actually think Chris Rock wore it quite well, to be honest with you. I mean, I was watching it now for our radio listeners. Bang, there it is. I mean, actually, he didn't even flinch that much, did he? He just took it, quite literally took it on the chin. It was quite a good effort.
Chris Rock should win an award for professionalism. He laughed it off, carried on, made a little bit of a joke out of it, and then went on to present his award. Whereas Will Smith came across as a big baby, quite frankly. I mean, he's not new to this game. He's been doing this for 30-odd years. Him and Jada have put their marriage on a world stage. They've got their own talk show discussing it. So they should be able to handle the backlash and jokes, quite frankly. And that is what I think this is about. I think that there is some things going on behind the scenes here. Obviously, we know that Jada does have a which is why the joke upset her. But also, him and Rock have a long-running feud. He's made jabs at them before. And also, I think he's really protective over his marriage and wife, because they've discussed having an open marriage in Hollywood. They've become a big talking point. And he doesn't like it. But I say, then don't make it out of your mouth.
I'm very sorry, Anna. We're going to have to park it, I'm afraid. It's a bit... you sound like a little bit like a robot. So the connection's not great, unfortunately, but apologies for that. But we will get you back on very soon. Hannah Hope, of course, showbiz expert.
Yeah, so do you actually... I mean, we know the Oscars, the viewing figures have been going down over the last few years, which is why some cynics among us are saying that this was obviously staged. It's to get the viewership up and to put the Oscars back in the news. Do you watch the Oscars usually? Because, I mean, OK, yes, this was slightly funny. Even Chris Rock thought it was funny, clearly, and it would be weird if he didn't, since he's a comedian. You'd expect him to have a sense of humour. But I don't care much for the Oscars anyway, irrespective of this. Didn't care before, don't care much now.
No.
Do you?
Not really, not massively.
I just feel like it's very overindulgent. I mean, obviously, we're talking about this because it was quite unexpected, and it's an interesting question whether he should have done it or not. That's kept, people, our viewers and our listeners talking this morning, because it's a bit of a philosophical question, I guess, to slap or not to slap, sort of, that is the question. But I don't care much about the Oscars anyway.
No.
Or celebs in general. Hollywood, it's completely out of touch. I think they're all generally virtue signallers, and I probably after today won't speak about it again for another year until I'm forced to. No, fair enough. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of virtue signalling. They highlight a different cause every single year, some of them quite spurious, and then, wheel them out when they're on stage. But it is very worthy, isn't it? It is very kind of self-absorbed, I suppose, the Oscars. Yeah. But having said that, if I won an Oscar, I'd be all over it.
You know?
Yeah, I'm sure you would.
Absolutely.
What film would you be playing in? What film role? Dumb and Dumber?
Potentially Dumb and Dumber.
We could be Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah?
Obviously, you're the dumber one.
Well, I got that, yeah. Thanks. I think maybe I could just be like Harry Styles after the weight game. You know, something like that.
Yeah.
I could do that. Or I could play Stephen Graham in a biopic of Stephen Graham.
Who would I play? Steady.
Well, I don't know. You could play Jada Pinkett Smith.
Yeah, I don't fancy going bold though.
Well, neither did she. Right. Okay. So loads of people getting in touch right now. I think Will Smith actually thought it was funny, but after seeing his wife's face, decided he would be in trouble. So
that's a good point. Actually,
I think that's what it was. I think that's what it is, right? So he's laughed. He's probably not got it. It's washed over him, right? And then she's shot him a look, and he's like, "Oh, I better go and slap him."
Yeah, just to make up for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you feel about a man defending your honour?
I'm well up for it, thank you very much. I did get criticised earlier by some of our viewers or listeners for saying, how dare you condone violence? I mean, I'm not condoning violence.
Yeah.
But then again, look, sometimes you have to stand up to somebody. I wouldn't have done that if I was Will Smith, but there are instances where sometimes you have to stand up because somebody has hurt a loved one.
Yeah.
And that's life, sadly.
It was a cracking slap as well, though, wasn't it?
That is life. But
Yeah.
again,
we're
not condoning violence on us.
How could we possibly do such a thing? Right, OK, thank you very much, everyone who's been getting in touch. Loads of you did today. Really, really appreciate it. gbviews@gbnews.uk. And for everyone on Twitter as well, @GBNews. But that's it from us now, isn't it?
Yes, it is. But don't go away, because up next is The Briefing with Gloria De Piero. We're going to be back here with you tomorrow. So see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern. We've started the day with some dense fog in places. That's now clearing. Then it's another dry day for many, but it's a lot more cloud in the sky for some and a few showers developing. Showers already starting to form across parts of southern Scotland and northern England. 1 or 2 possible for Northern Ireland later, as well as the southern part of England. Just the odd shower here, but cloudier skies for southern England and this cloudy zone for central and southern parts of Scotland into northern England as well. Where we've got some sunshine remaining though, 15 or 16 Celsius, still feeling warm, still above average for the time of year. Heading into the evening though, we'll see an area of more organised rain or showers push into southern counties of England. The showers across northern England, southern Scotland, Northern Ireland fade away, but another plume of showers moves into the far north of Scotland. Away from the cloud and the showers, temperatures will drop into the mid-single figures, but holding up at 9 Celsius where we've got a lot of cloud cover. A cold front, though, is on its way. That's pushing into the north of Scotland during Tuesday itself. That's going to bring in much colder air for the end of the week, but we begin Tuesday generally frost-free and a lot of cloud cover, a lot of low cloud, mist and fog, particularly for central and eastern England. Now, that will tend to retreat back to the North Sea, but we keep mostly grey skies, I think, in many places. And there'll be further showers for English Channel coasts, showers popping up elsewhere as well. And it's going to feel cooler, 12 to 14 Celsius in the south. Much colder there for the north of Scotland as rain and hill snow crosses central Scotland during Tuesday afternoon, followed by wintry flurries for the Northern Isles and the far north coast of Scotland. And that ushers in a real change for the second half of the week. We're going to see the cold air sink south. We're going to see in many places some further showers, which will consist of rain, sleet, hail and snow, and a significant drop in temperatures.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite show.